Hi, and welcome to our rare set review with me and Trumpetman. We're going to look at all the rares from March of the Machine. And we did already multicolors and white, so we're going to crack on with the blue rares and mythics and give us our grades. We're going in the order of the cards that we agree the most about. And then as we progress through each color, disagreements start to amount. Hopefully no shouting matches this time. Is that clickbait? No, I don't think we had a shouting match yet. But
Not yet. There's still time for pure vitriol.
There's still time. Yeah, there's still time. Maybe Urabrask. I don't know. Let's go. So the first card that we have is Fairy Mastermind. That's a 1 and a blue fairy rogue. It has flash. It has flying, which weirdly one of the rares can make it being cast from the top of the library in 2 modes. It's a 2/1, and whenever opponent draws their second card each turn, you draw a card, and also you can pay 3 and a blue to make each player draw a card. So I gave it a B, you gave it a B. I guess that means we sort of agree it's a B level card. I guess based on mainly it being a 2/1 flash flyer for 2 mana, which is a already good rate. That's like a C plus B minus rate on its own. And the ability is actually nice because, yes, you give some value to the opponent, but if you activate it at the end of your opponent's turn, they will draw their second card of the turn, which means that you draw an extra card. So you sort of draw 2, they draw 1, which nets you a card, which is neat.
Yep, and you get to use the cards first because it's the end of their turn. So
exactly,
all good things.
All good things, and yeah, I mean, I guess it's a good ability to have in a deck that also has some other instant capabilities, so you can keep your mana open. If a counter spell, for example, will not have a good target, you can just draw extra cards and accrue value. If not, then it's fine for you as well because you're ahead. You kept your mana open and you used it efficiently, so that's good.
All right, our next one. Already, look at us disagreeing. The Chrome Host Seed Shark, 2 and a blue for a 2/4 Friction Shark at rare. It has flying, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, incubate X, where X is that spell's mana value. So we've seen a lot of these types of cards where it's like they kind of do something and they sit in play, and somehow they can accrue value, often in the form of like incubator tokens or various other things. And the longer the game goes, the bigger the advantage. But this card in particular is pretty strong, I think, because it has flying. So it's really nice in this set in the fact that it can attack pretty well with the flying. It can block pretty well with the 4 toughness. And you're just going to play non-creature spells at certain points of the game. And so if you get reasonably sized creatures tacked on to that at some point, spend some mana. And this thing is just kind of excellent on that. Now, of course, if it just dies immediately, you didn't really get that much for it. But I think it's not going to be that hard to just play a couple spells after the Seed Shark's been sitting in play. And like I said, the 3-mana 2/4 flying mode is already pretty decent. So I went all the way to B+ because I think, there's going to be battles and things that are going to trigger this, and it's going to be wonderful. But sometimes it won't be that good. And so, Sierkiewicz, you're thinking B. I can see that as well.
I think you're right, actually. I look at this card and I evaluate it from a 3-drop perspective, but I think that it's a great 6-drop. When you play it on turn 6, you cast some maybe Convoke spell with mana value 4, and you get a 4/4 flyer.
You don't get a flyer,
for incubate.
But whatever. Like, that's still really great.
Yeah, that's still really great, especially that the spell probably will be somewhat impactful. So maybe looking at it as not a 3-drop, I think that the card is better than a B. So probably B+ will be a good evaluation. But again, as we said before in this review, we evaluated cards independently, and also we have slightly different maybe idea what the grades mean, so there will be minor differences. But I think that this card is probably better than I graded it. C double, 2 blue instant. This spell can't be copied. That's probably a failsafe from making some kind of obscene combos with it. Choose 1. If an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, you may choose both. A copy target spell, you may choose a new targets for the copy. And important, it's a spell, not an instant or sorcery spell, so you can actually copy permanent spells and you create a token that is a copy of that spell, or create a token that is a copy of target creature. So even if the creature already is on the battlefield, you can copy something. I gave it a B minus. I think it's a solid card. I gave it B minus mainly because I think it will be maybe played in decks that will not perform extremely well, and that will be a slight bump on the grading scale we use, which, small reminder, is based on what game and hand win rate do we predict for the card. But it's a good spell. I mean, I'm not questioning it. Well, first of all, B minus is a good grade. And I think that my knock is not because of the power of the card, but it's about power of the color that surrounds it and decks that it might be in.
Yeah, that'll make sense. I'm slightly higher at B on this. If you can only get one of these modes, then certainly it's not going to be at the B level. But if you do build towards it in a deck that can sometimes get both, it's quite strong. And basically, a form and a clone that can get anything is going to be just always a pretty good card. So I sort of think that is the main part of the card. But also sometimes, your opponent's going to play a spell and you really want it, so you can copy that as well, sometimes nullifying it. So it's not quite a counter spell, but it sometimes can be, where it's like they kill your thing, you kill their thing, etc. And anytime you get both, like, you're getting a 2-for-1 pretty much every time. So if you can set up the 2-for-1, it's great. And those, it's going to be amazing in those games. And then the games where you just have a clone, that's fine too. So B for that.
Yeah, that was my main worry, was that the decks that want to utilize the 8 or more cards in the graveyard are going to be mainly like the mirror maybe, and I'm just not
It is a little
very
clunky,
hopeful.
that's
Yeah.
for sure.
But yeah, I mean, I agree, card is powerful. Let's move on.
Then we have Zephyr Singer, 2 blue for a 3/4 Siren Pirate. It's rare and has Convoke, so it can get cheaper. It has Flying and Vigilance, the best mechanics in the set, I think, basically. And when it enters the battlefield, put a flying counter on each creature that convoked it. So a 4-mana 3/4 flyer that you can cast even if you're light on lands, which is kind of crazy. And giving your whole team flying at the cost of just not attacking for a turn seems super strong. So I don't know. This card seems like super busted to me. Now, obviously, it doesn't like stop what your opponent's doing, but in a way, it enables all your battles and allows you to just tap in the air and do all these crazy banana things. And even if you only tap 1 or 2 creatures, like giving those flying for the rest of the game is going to be really, really good. And the 3/4 stabilizes pretty well early in the game. And in the late in the game, if you can afford to tap a few things and not die immediately, then you've pretty much maybe won the game because you put a couple really high power creatures into the air for the rest of the game. So I went all the way on A minus because I think this is just a total bomb, actually, because of all of that added up. And you're thinking a little bit lower Sirkovitz, but obviously a great card too, B plus.
Yeah, B plus is still really good in my book. I downgraded it slightly, mainly because you want to convoke it with really good creatures, and there is some sort of conflict between
Blue
tapping
doesn't
your
have that,
best
yeah.
well, no, but even if you play like blue green and you tap like big creatures to give them flying, well, you leave yourself open for 1 turn, and that's maybe a slight knock against the card, but still great. Next we have Rona, Herald of Invasion. Oh, here we have a slightly bigger difference in our grading already. It's a 1 and a blue legendary creature, human wizard. It's a 1/3. Whenever you cast a legendary spell, you can untap it. And you can tap it to draw a card and then discard a card. So it's a straight looter, strictly better. Well, not strictly better, better looter, because its normal looter was a 1/1. This one is a 1/3. And it also has 5 and a Phyrexian black to transform it at sorcery speed, and it transforms into a 5/5 trampler. And whenever a source deals damage to it, that source controller exiles a card from their hand at random. If it's a land, you may put it onto the battlefield under your control. Otherwise, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. I give it a C plus because I graded it mainly at a good looter. And the backside, it is a 5/5 trample, but the obliterator thing is sort of weird because you play it quite late, and because you play it quite late, I don't know if they are going to have anything in their hand. especially if they know that it's coming, they will definitely try to make sure that they don't have anything useful in their hand anymore, because obviously they don't want it to be given to you. But even if you flip it and it's a 5/5 trampler, you still need to somehow get them to deal damage to Rona, which probably they will avoid too if they have something that you can steal. So it's going to be big and maybe sort of quasi unblockable 5/5 thing later in the game. But I don't know. There's something that doesn't suit me with this ability, and I don't know why. And that's why I gave it a C plus.
Yeah, I think you mostly have that all right. I just think that the looter is like almost a B minus, not quite, but I think we've just seen how good smoothing your draws are out like at the beginning, like even like Axiom Engraver, right? Like that card alone, just giving you a couple rummages was great with the 1/3 body. Now, one was all about board presence, and I think the set is two to a different extent. Board presence matters because you always want to be on the board with battles. Obviously, you're not just dead. That's kind of like different. But I think a looter just making sure you always have action is fantastic. And while I don't think this card is like Jace Vryn's Prodigy, which was like an amazing card, which loots and then turns into something incredible, it being a worse version of that, where you get a pretty good thing later, like turning this into essentially a 5/5 haste because it's sitting in play once it flips. And your opponent, it puts pressure on them because they need to empty their hand or start taking 5 before you start attacking them. And so the front face, I already think is quite excellent. And the back is like a bonus. Once you've already smoothed out your hand, then you say, okay, I don't need the looter anymore. Now I need a 5/5. Now it's time to start attacking. Plus, not really my evaluation at all, but maybe you'll have some crazy scenario where you're the one who like deals 1 or 2 damage to your own Rona somehow, and then you play like an 8-drop. I don't know. That could be kind of
Oh,
cool.
maybe. I was
Not at
literally,
all part of my evaluation.
I was
I give it
literally
a
thinking
B.
about how can I turn it into some kind of a weird combo piece in limited. That's
There it is.
I'm glad that I'm not the only one thinking about it. But okay, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to put it up to B minus in my evaluation, but I don't think I'll go much higher than
Okay.
that.
All right. We have Transcendent Message. X blue, 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 blue. That's 4 blues for those who are counting. Instant at rare, and it has Convoke and draw X cards. So I like how few words are on the card. Now let's talk a lot about it. So there's just a lot of mana, but this is the type of card where it is a win condition on its own, because if you can just not die and at some point in the game you draw like 4 or 5 cards, then you use those cards to win the game pretty easily. Kind of reminds me a lot of Silver Scrutiny from Dominar United, which was kind of a similar card, but not quite. But I do think there is some tension on this card because it's pretty expensive. So you want to just make sure the game goes long so that you can refuel. How do you make the game go long? You just trade and clear the board. But if you trade and clear the board, the Convoke's a bit worse. So it's kind of like a little bit awkward where you really want the like low power, high defense cards with the Transcendent Message deck so that you're playing to the board, but you're not trading. And then at some point you use this Convoke to get way ahead. So I think it's actually going to be pretty more deck specific than it looks like at first glance. And I think, well, pretty nice. The quad blue to set it up, even though you can Convoke, is quite a lot. And it just kind of needs to be your game plan. So I think, while powerful, I could see this card like being the card you sort of base your deck around. If you don't, if you just put it in a normal deck, I don't think it's going to be very good. And that's kind of why I put it at a C minus range. That being said, I see the potential of, the board is stalled because you built your deck a certain way. You have a couple blue creatures in play, and you spend 5 or 6 mana to draw, you know, anywhere from like 4 to 6 cards. That's obviously fantastic. So
Yeah, it's funny because I gave it a C plus because of the same rationale. So when you basically knocked it down for it having to be a planet on its own, I knocked it up because I thought it's a great planet of its own, and I maybe focus more optimistically on potential. I think you might be right in the context of our evaluation that people are going to play it in decks where they shouldn't, and that will lower the win rate of the card. But I think that it's going to be a great plan. I also thought about Silver Scrutiny exactly because of the Tudak Cube's love of this card and
Mhm.
how he made plans on around it and how he made decks around it. But I guess that not everyone will be able to do that. Maybe some people are going to play it unnecessarily. But it might be also that it's going to be a card that people will not want, so you can get it quite late if you are interested in that kind of plan. So that might
Right,
be a
right.
knock up for it, and maybe better players are going to be more happy playing this card. Also, I mean, when you think about how to clog the board, I think that one of the good strategies around it will be to potentially play a number of battles and then stop an opponent attacking just because they want to protect their battles. And maybe that's the plan with this card.
True.
And
I think, yeah, people aren't going to attack as much in the format overall because you just have to make sure you have creatures back where normally you don't. So it's kind of the opposites of ships passing in the night, if that makes sense. Like every time you attack, you sort of open up the opportunity for your opponent to not only attack, but like really wreck you with battles coming down. So because of that, everyone's going to just be playing a little bit more cautiously than normal. It does make this type of card better. It means there's going to be more board stalls. So maybe I'm looking at this in a traditional set, but with the rules of the format, actually, with that in mind, a late game plan, you might be more on the right side here with the C plus. Um, it could, and honestly, like the effect is powerful enough where if this is consistently happening, this card's like a B. But we'll have to see on that.
yeah, I mean, I looking at it right now, I think that your evaluation is probably closer to the our grade. I think my evaluation might be closer to the actual card power level if you play it right. That's maybe. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I agree with that.
Okay. That
More words
why?
for you.
I lost. I lost. We have this battle on who is going to get the cards with the fewest words, and I'm clearly losing on this front in this one. Jin Gitaxias or Jin Gitaxias. Free blue blue, legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor, 5/5. It has word 2, and I wish it stopped there. But no, it doesn't. It also has when you cast a non creature spell with mana value 3 or greater, draw a card. For 3 and a blue, exile Jin Gitaxias and then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner control. Activate only as a sorcery and only if you have 7 or more cards in your hand. It's a big ask. And it flips into a saga called The Great Synthesis. Chapter number 1 is draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand. And since you had to flip it when you had 7 or more cards, so it means draw 7 or more cards. You have no maximum hand size for as long as you control the Great Synthesis. Chapter number 2, return all non-Phyrexian creatures to their owner hands. Chapter 3, you may cast any number of spells from your hand without paying their mana cost, exile the Great Synthesis, then return it to the battlefield. Now, yes, the saga is great. It's going to be very tricky to activate it because you will have to somehow manage to get 7 cards. So there is a problem in there. I guess it will require playing it while having 3 cards in your hand, drawing a card, and maybe convoking the draw 2 spell, which of course costs more than 3, and then you draw an extra card, and then you have 7 cards and you flip it, and then you are basically winning if you manage to do it. And I think that 5 mana 5/5 with word 2 and the ability of drawing extra cards is nice, but that's probably close to your evaluation of C plus.
Yep.
I gave it a B because I think that it is a sub game, but I do think that sometimes you will be able to flip it, and sometimes you will be able to build decks that are capable of flipping it, and that's why I optimistically gave it a B.
I love it. I love the optimistic B there, because when that happens, it's going to be sweet. I just think it obviously has to be card draw spells to actually enable it, because otherwise
Netting
you're
0,
just
yeah.
basically netting 0, but you're still getting the effect of those cards. So while it doesn't help towards the ultimate, right? If you play a removal spell that costs 3, well, now you played a removal spell that also drew you a card. That's amazing. Doesn't help you get to the flip, but that's already going to help you basically win the game if you do that enough times. I just think the card is better than a 5 mana 5/5 ward 2, but it's not that much better than a 5 mana 5/5 ward 2, because how many non-creature spells with mana value 3 or greater are you going to play? Also, because this is one of the 5 drops in your deck. Convoke helps a lot. So if you do have some of the better convoke spells, the more of them you have, the more of those cards you can play. It kind of reminds me of anytime we have like prowess type cards or cards that care about non-creature spells, and then you have spells that make creatures. It sort of allows you to cheat a little bit in your deck construction. And Jin Contaxious can do the same thing in essence, where you're playing maybe some convoke spells or things that cost 3 or more, but really you can kind of think of them costing like 2 or 3 instead. So I do like that aspect to the card. I just think it does ask a lot of you. So I think it's almost more of a reward rather than a reason to be there. It's like if you're already kind of going down that road of having some of these sweet spells, that's great. But I don't really want to draft an entire deck around Jin Gataxius, because then I'm like, it's a 5-drop. I have to get into play. I have to untap, and then my engines are online.
I mean, you have to draw it. That's the biggest problem, I think, with those type of cards.
And I mean, the good news is if you built a deck where it's like you have a bunch of removal spells that cost like 3 and 4 mana, then you play those before Jin Gataxius. It's fine as long as you have enough after it. Then you can still kind of do the thing, but it's just that doesn't seem like it's going to be that realistic.
I think, yeah, I mean, probably like lots of those cards will fit into your plan anyway, like the draw 2 card spell, for example. And I guess that you can on the fly change your plan from I'm playing my control game into I'm playing a game now where I want to survive long enough to be able to flip Jin Gitaxias and survive till chapter number 2.
True. Also, I got burned on the Dominuses from the last set. I gave them all really hard grades, and they were all like just junky cards.
Yeah.
So I was like, the stats. So I was like, no, I need to look at what is the mana cost, what are the power and toughnesses, and
5/5 is good in blue.
Yeah,
and the word is nice.
It is. But even the that blue Dominus, which was like a 4 mana 3/5 flyer that could get indestructible, like wasn't even very good by the end of the format. So I was just surprised by that. Now blue was bad, so I mean that's a different story. Okay. All right, my turn. I think it's still fewer words, so that's good. Invasion of Arcavios. Arcavios is 3 blue for a battle siege. It's rare. It says when it enters the battlefield, search your library, graveyard, or outside the game. That's cool. For an instant or sorcery card you own, reveal it and put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle. So for 5 mana, you go get an instant or sorcery from somewhere. Most likely going to be in your deck, because if it's a really good card, you probably want it in your deck to draw. But I guess if you have niche random cards in your sideboard, you could go get those under certain circumstances. That is a nice upside. And then it has a whopping 7 defense. But it flips into Invocation of the Founders. It's an enchantment, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, you may copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So we've seen kind of effects like this before, where it's like 4 or 5 mana to go search your deck for basically anything. Now, this is even more restrictive because it's not anything. It's a sorcery or an instant. And those cards tend to be like D- D level cards, or just Fs. It depends on the format. I was sort of thinking this format, you are trying to set up for the battles. You are trying to go kind of maybe a little bit longer. If you do have a really impactful card, then you can go get it basically every time. Like this is sort of that second copy. And so it's super clunky. But if you do manage to flip it, doubling up all your spells is super strong. So there's a lot of power behind this card, but it's just incredibly hard to make work. So like I recognize the power, but also the difficulty of the setup. And so I gave it a D. Because most of the time you're just not going to get there. But when it works, it can actually be the type of card that wins the game on its own. So you have to kind of still respect that, I think. But you're not about it, I can see.
I gave it an F because I want to warn people about playing that card. I think that it's going to work maybe once in 1,000 drafts or something, which is just too rare for me to consider it as a card. I think that the players who are capable to utilizing this card well will realize when this card is actually playable and will avoid it. I'd rather give it a precautionary F to the people that might not have that.
I think it's closer to F than not. That's true.
I just have one Vortus question. Is Arcavius the plane where Strixhaven is in? I thought Strixhaven was the plane name.
Maybe Strixhaven's the school. I don't know.
Yeah.
It talks about professors and grades and things here. So it's got to be Strixhaven.
It looks to me like that, and then I thought that just the plane is also called Strixhaven.
Isn't the set literally called Strixhaven: School of Mages or something?
Yeah, but I thought that the whole plane is the school. That was my head.
You can be a professor or a student here. That's it. The entire world.
Yeah. That's
Today we learned something.
most of my world is like that. Most of the people are either students or professors that I know.
You live on Strixhaven.
uh, Elder Jeep Fiend, we started 30 minutes
30.
ago,
Yeah.
and probably like 20 minutes of the review, so you didn't miss much. We started with blue and we did white and multicolor yesterday, so we still have a bunch. Oh well, what comes around goes around. I have Invasion of Segovia, the most flavorful card of the set, I already call it. 2 and a blue for a battle. It has 4 defense. When Invasion of Segovia enters the battlefield, create the 2/1/1 blue Kraken creature tokens with trample. Those 1/1 tramplers just jamming. And then if you flip it, it flips into a Cetus, Sea Tyrant of Segovia. It is a 3/3 legendary serpent. Non-creature spells you cast have convoke. And at the beginning of your end step, untap up to 4 target creatures. So it's basically a reclamation sort of on the stick. Obviously, the flavor of the card is that Segovia Behemoth Segovian Leviathan was a 3/3, and that was
Ah,
considered to be a very small Leviathan. So they made a joke that Segovia is the
it's
small
even
plane
smaller.
that was invaded by exactly 2 Phyrexian soldiers, and then the sea creatures of Segovia, which are gigantic for Segovian standards, but are 1/1 tramplers. That's why they have trample, because they are gigantic in their world. So probably normal creature in their world would be like 0.1, 0.1.
That's
Uh,
hilarious.
they attack the foot of the soldier here on the picture, because they are so small that they basically can only grab the ankle, which I find it great. I gave it a D. You gave it a C. I think that I like some of those abilities, but I just think that they're too small ball, ironically for the plane. Um, I think that the fact that those Krakens are only blue and are not red is not so great for the Convoke deck, because you want to have those red creatures to tap. Um, and yeah, I just probably will play it in some decks when it's going to have some kind of build around quality. But as a generic grade, I think people will play it slightly too much, and it will be more like a D.
Yeah, that all makes sense. I think it is pretty much still going to just go in the blue red convoke deck. Now, a lot of those cards are already going to have convoke, but not every single spell will, I think. And so there's going to be some, I think, crossover between spells matters and convoke matters, and this does kind of tie the room together. And while it's overcosted by about 1 for those 2/1/1s, the ability to give the non-creature spells, like you're going to include a few random ones to give those convoke, is nice. I did mention how I love vigilance in the format because it allows you to, attack and block. So this effectively on the backside gives vigilance plus, and being able to convoke maybe twice on a turn, like on your turn and your opponent's turn, is nice. So it's sort of this weird mix of like small seedborn muse plus all this other nonsense. I don't think the card's incredible, but I think it's a playable piece in an archetype, hence a C for me.
I would be maybe slightly higher on it if the Sea Tyrant of Segovia was a 2/4. I think that the 3/3 is that you will have those moments when you actually work towards flipping the Cetus, and then it just dies to a 2 mana spell, and you'll be sad about it.
That's true, but I think at the end of the day, you have to kind of also just think how much you paid for these battles. So, like a lot of times, I'm like, oh, I like that's why I think underrated there was like the red one from Mercadia, and I was like, well, how good is like this 3/3 with an ability? But then at the end of the day, I realized like I just paid 2 mana for that card, like when we did the uncommon set review. So 3 mana 3/3 with his ability obviously is really good. Now that's not what this card is, but I think the potential is there.
Okay.
All right. Look at me being optimistic here. Here we go. Complete the circuit. 5 and a blue for an instant at rare, and it has convoke, and you may cast sorcery spells this turn as though they had flash. And when you cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell twice. You may choose new targets for the copies. So, what does this card do? Well, I mostly think of it as a card that it's turn 6 or 7. You got some creatures in play, maybe 2, 3, 4 creatures in play. Your opponent has some creatures in play, and you go to your end of your turn, and you complete the circuit with your creatures, and then you still have anywhere from like 3 to 5 mana, and you cast a spell. And suddenly that spell, you copy it twice, so that is going to be 3 total copies of the spell. So you're basically spending 2 cards to get 3 spells, which you can kind of think as a 2 for 3, but obviously it depends what the spells are. And so you're already going up a card if you combo that. Now, what's the fail case? You have complete the circuit and you have no spells. So the card is just complete utter trash because it does nothing on its own. But I think if your deck has spells in it and you have some creatures, then you're actually going to be pretty happy with this card sometimes when you're able to set that up. It requires some good setup, but it is, I think, powerful. And sometimes you're just going to use it in conjunction with like a card draw spell and suddenly draw like 6 cards or something, or you're going to kill a few of your opponent's things. So I definitely think the card is playable. It just does require a lot of setup as well. It does kind of require that board state. If you're ever behind, it's really bad because again, you've traded off creatures and this is a 6-mana spell. But I do like that your few creatures in play allow you to still have mana for whatever it is you actually want to cast because you can complete the circuit and make it all work. So what do I think about the card? It kind of sounds like I'm saying it's great. Not the case. I'm giving it a D+. But I think if you go through the hoops, then you can set up scenarios where it can actually contribute some power to your strategy as long as you build the rest of your deck responsibly.
Yeah, I think that again the problem is that people will
not build their deck responsibly.
Ignore the responsible part of it and put it just because it's a rare and looks splashy. I don't know. I mean, I put an F. Again, this is my precautionary F. I think that, again, I will probably want to play that card maybe once in the format if I actually find some time to play at all and not do reviews and articles instead. But I see the appeal of it, and I do. Maybe I did miss the part that you can actually do it at the end of the turn and also cast sorcery spells, because I think that that's a big boost. You can maybe play the thing that puts things on top of the library 3 times, and that's going to be quite a good way of playing this card. So maybe it's slightly better, maybe like a build around D+.
Pretty much, yeah.
But we don't have build around grades, yeah. We don't have build around grades, unfortunately. So I'll stick with my F. I mean, I'm happy with the F as a precautionary card. That was the blue cards. And actually, when I look back, not so many of the great ones. And actually, we very much agreed on the great ones. That's the Fairy Mastermind, the Shark, Sea Double, and the Zephyr Singer.
Yeah.
I mean, Jin Gitaxias, arguably, according to some, is great, but that's mainly according to me.
Its name is not Jin Great Taxius.
Yeah, that's true.
We'll see. We'll have to have them come back as altered traders.
Yeah, there's a couple of possible fails in blue rares, which is making me sad, because I think that if you want to play those archetypes that are slightly more controlling, you want to have bombs to be able to top, and you will have to look for those bombs in your support color. That's
true.
All right, we can move to the black, and I think we go straight to black without any introductions. And again, we're starting with the cards that we agree on, and the first one is Ayara, and I think that it's my turn to read now, unfortunately. Ayara, Widow of the Realm, 1 black for a 3/3, legendary creature, Elf Noble. Important type because it doesn't die to a green-black battle, as it's
Invasion of Lorwyn.
Yeah, as it's not a non-elf.
Yes,
that's true.
I think. Well, maybe she's from
Ayara is from Eldraine.
Eldraine. Okay, never mind.
Tap, sacrifice another creature or artifact. Ayara, Widow of the Realm, deals X damage to target opponent or battle, and you gain X life, where X is the sacrificed permanent mana value. And then 5 and red Phyrexian, transform it, activate as a sorcery, and it transforms into a 4/4 that has, at the beginning of combat on your turn, return up to 1 target artifact or creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. I gave it a B. You gave it a B. I think that, first of all, creature is like so-so for double pipped card that's legendary and is 3/3 for 3. But the ability is good to flip battles. And if you have some kind of sacrifice synergies, that's going to play well with that. But I think that the most power of the card is in flipping it and playing it in a deck that actually has some ways of fueling the graveyard in other ways than sacrificing it. And I think that a lot of the power of this card for me is in being able to flip it and get stuff that you put into graveyard as you play it, or as you milled yourself and basically getting that extra value, and you're getting also a much better body in 4/4.
Yeah, I think that's all true. Also, if you can set up combos and on the backside, you're able to sacrifice what you bring back. You can just keep returning the same thing over and over because it only exiles end of turn. So that's pretty huge. And I think the fact, like you said, if you're not able to attack a battle, and IR can flip battles, not in combat, I think all those types of cards get huge boosts in this format. So she can easily just like throw a couple things at your opponent if they're low on life. So it does a lot of different things. Pretty strong.
Yeah, the fact that I think that that it doesn't gain the creature, it doesn't gain if it leaves the battlefield, exile it like they do with Unearth. That's a big difference because you have so many sacrifice outlets in this format that it will become like being able to recurse something with a good ETB every single turn is going to be fantastic.
Definitely.
Like one thing that I have against it is it has the sacrifice and artifact, but all the incubate tokens are 0 mana and they will do nothing with it, which is slightly sad, I guess. But
Definitely.
it's also great with the threaten effect. So if you steal something of your opponent, you can sacrifice it and chuck it in their face, additionally to drain them.
Right. Bloated Processor is next, 2 and a black for a 3/2 Phyrexian. It's rare. And speaking of sacrifice, so sacrifice another Phyrexian. So maybe comboing with IRA or something. Put a +1/+1 counter on Bloated Processor. And when Bloated Processor dies, incubate X, where X is its power. So a 3 mana 3/2 with the little sacrifice engine is pretty sweet. But even just a 3 mana 3/2 that dies into eventually a 3/3 is really, really nice. It kind of reminds me of like a super souped up Stinging Hivemaster from 1. And that card was always kind of nice, just did the thing. And there is value in being able to grow this for no mana. Your opponents always have to be like, think about how many things you can sacrifice, how good and bad is that, and like the more iterations of that it is, like the more annoying this card is. And if you do that once or twice, when this dies, you do get like a 4/4, 5/5, 6/6 as well. So it does scale very, very nicely. But even the 3 mana 3/2 eventually dies into a 3/3 is a really good card. That's probably like a B minus. And so we're saying, hey, we're going to bump that up as well to B here. We both agree. Pretty nice card.
Yeah. It's so funny. You looked at it as a much better Hive Master. I looked at it as slightly worse Arcbound Ravager. Because it has the sort of modular kind of theme.
Yeah, it does kind of. Yeah.
And that's why part of my grade on that is that it can be really big if you play the right deck also. I mean, and become out of control. Now this is a perfect card for the Ayara, by the way, that you want to recurse and sacrifice every turn to get your incubate tokens.
Yeah, super strong. Only requires 2 rares, but still.
A pile on 3 and a black for an instant with Convoke, and it has destroy target creature on Planeswalker Surveil 2. This is a B. It's a card that doesn't have any fireworks.
We don't have to say anything more about it. It's okay.
It's a solid removal, a very good removal, and very, very good removals get a B, and that's it.
Nice.
And also dope art. Yeah, we agree on that?
Yeah, we agree on all of that. That's wonderful. Ah, dang it. Okay, here we go. Invasion of Fiora is next. So 4 black for a battle, of course. It's rare. When it enters the battlefield, choose one or both. Destroy all legendary creatures, destroy all non-legendary creatures, and it has 4 defense. So you have some options. You can wipe the board, or if you happen to have a legend, you can maybe Plague Wind if your opponent doesn't have a legend, or they have that pesky legend you just absolutely have to get rid of. You pay 6 mana and kill their legend if you don't have any. So it does have some nice range of options there. And because you can sweep the board in ways that are beneficial, if you could do that and then follow up, maybe you can defeat this right away. Or if you get their really good legend blocker, you might be able to defeat it. What do you get on the backside once you get past 4 defense? You get Marchesa, Resolute Monarch, legendary creature, human noble, and Marchesa is a 3/6 menace death touch. So that's pretty sweet. A 6 mana pointed removal spell wrath type thing, and on the backside you get a 3/6 mana death touch. That already is like really good. And when Marchesa attacks, remove all counters from up to 1 target permanent. You can use that to get rid of battles. You can kill Phyrexian tokens with it. You can do a lot of things, which is nice. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if you haven't been dealt combat damage since your last turn, you draw a card and use 1 life. That's really weird. But okay, if you don't take any damage, then that's also wonderful. All that said, the front half is kind of awkward because it's pretty expensive. So if you want a Wrath, you have to wait till 6. You don't always even get there sometimes if you're losing. And it's even when you get some better options where there's a mix of legendary creatures on both sides, it doesn't always work out the way you want. But there's a lot of power here, right? Like the card clearly, like when things align, it's going to be super, super busted. And even when they don't align, as long as you can cast it, always having that board clear is pretty nice, even if it's overcosted. Marchese on the backside also is a very strong card. So we said, hey, we recognize a little bit of the clunkiness of this card, but dang it if it's great. We said B for Invasion of Fiora.
Yeah, I do like that card a lot in terms of like being also slightly a game plan of its own. With like sweepers in this format in white and black are just going to be also so much better because you can keep those incubator tokens incubating and then give them haste next turn.
And
So you get
apparently that last line of text that reads so weirdly is because this is the Resolute Monarch, so it's supposed to be like if as long as you hold the crown, you draw cards. I guess that's the joke.
yeah. That
We're
thing
saying
that's the part of the Vortos that Marquesa
that's
was in the
see,
set where Monarch was introduced. I think.
I'm not doing so well with the Vorthosing, which is a problem because this set has a lot of it.
I listened to Shivam's podcast and I get all the stuff from there. So blame him if I don't know something. But isn't Fiora where Duck Faden is from?
Yeah, Dak Faden didn't do so well with War of the Spark, but
No, he
yeah.
didn't. That was the worst kind of death in Magic, just off screen. Bye bye. Anyway, I think a card is great. I mean, the 6 toughness on a Death Toucher is just also annoying. No. I get one as well. Invasion of Innistrad. 2 black for a battle. It has flash. It has 5 defense. And when Invasion of Innistrad enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets -13/-13 until end of turn. Great removal. 4 mana instant that kills everything because unless it has protection from black, really, because it will kill all the indestructible things, all the annoying things. At -13/-13 will do the job. And then if you flip it, it flips into an enchantment. When Deluge of the Dead enters the battlefield, create 2/2/2 black zombie creature tokens, and you can pay 2 and a black to exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a creature card, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. I give it A minus. You give it B plus. I think it's just great.
Yep.
And the removal is just fantastic because you can time it very well at the end of their turn to enable an attack that will flip the saga. And the Deluge just makes 2/2 zombies, which doesn't seem a lot, but it's an engine that will create much more value if it stays on board. And because it's an enchantment, if it was a creature, I would give it probably like closer to BB plus. But because it's an enchantment and it's going to be hard to deal with, this is almost guaranteed to generate that value. And also, it sort of is annoying for some strategies that require things in the graveyard to be in the graveyard. So you can use it as a counter spell for some graveyard recursion on top of everything.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I just knocked it a little bit because I thought, honestly, like the backside, the 2/2 zombies is nice, but it's not like I'm not wowed by it. Like, whereas the last card, I was like, wow, Marchese is like really, really OP. Deluge, like, it's a good card, and you're happy to have the ability to make more zombies, but I'm like, I don't really know. I'm mostly evaluating this as like a really great removal spell with upside, so I gave it a B plus.
Cool. I mean, that's fine. Half a grade or one grading step is not a big difference anyway.
No, yeah, it's clearly excellent. You're probably going to first pick it almost every time. Similarly, Archpriest of Shadows is next. 3 black for a 4/4 human warlock at rare. It has backup 1, so it can come in as a 5/5, or you can give its counter elsewhere. And what are you distributing for a turn? Well, Death Touch. And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or battle, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So most of the time, this is going to come down. You're going to want to back up because you're going to want to get that creature this bonus, attack your opponent, get a creature back from your graveyard, and still have the Archpriest 4/4 sitting ready to do it all again next turn. Not to mention, you threw a +1/+1 counter around, and you're often going to probably not play this card until you have an opening, or if you just play this and it's a 5/5, then hopefully your opponent can't deal with that, and you start getting the value as well. I don't know what's to say about this card. It's great. The only thing sometimes holding this type of effect back is if you don't have good targets in your graveyard, like the game has gone in a way where you just have not very many creatures, or worst case scenario, nothing yet has died and you're playing more spells and not enough creatures. But if you just put this in a normal deck, it's going to be absolutely excellent. Gave it a B+.
Yeah, I think my A- is solely on the back of the land cycling creatures and being in the format, and I'm just going to probably do that mini plan when I'm playing this card.
Oh yeah, that's excellent.
Because getting 6 mana on top of the 5 mana I spent for something that is probably worth more than 5 mana is going to be just excellent, and you can probably, it makes it just that bit easier to build up into a massive blowout when you play it. That's
a really good combo. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. So just prioritize those a little bit more, and then it probably is in the A range. You're right.
No, why? Shieldred, 3 black, legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor. Power and toughness are just Shieldred power and toughness, 4/5. It has menace. When Shieldred enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifice a non-token creature or planeswalker. 4 and a black exile Shieldred, then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner control. Activate only as a sorcery and only if an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. So that's actually a doable condition to flip it. So that's going to be flipping a lot, and probably because of that should be killed on sight. Otherwise, you're in trouble. Because it flips into a saga, the True Scriptures, Chapter 1, for each opponent, destroy up to 1 target creature or planeswalker that player controls. So basically a removal. Chapter 2, each opponent discards 3 cards, then mills 3 cards. And Chapter 3, put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control, and then flip the saga back into Shieldred, which instantly makes the opponent sacrifice another card, which is just I mean, if you go through this first cycle, I heard the interview with Dave Humphries, and he said that the original plan was that if the saga runs out, the creature runs out and it goes to the graveyard. But then there were complaints that you lose the value, and I'm thinking, like, what games were they playing that you can flip it, go through the whole saga, and then come back to Shieldred, and the game is not over just yet?
Yeah, but that's wild.
I gave it an A. You gave it an A-. I think that, look, 4/5.
You're probably right. It's probably an A. Whatever. I'll give it an A. I don't care.
For 4/5, that already takes away one thing from them when it enters the battlefield. That's already great. Flipping
like
it
B+
destroys a big thing that you sort of know that you're going to get back. So not only you destroy it, but you know that give it 2 turns and it's on your side of the battlefield. Then discarding 3 cards means that they have to rush their decisions because they know that the Chapter 2 is going to hit, and they need to get rid of those cards from their hand and start playing them, so that breaks up the pattern of their play. And Chapter 3, combined with the flipping back and killing one of their extra creatures, is going to be game ending so many of the times.
Yeah.
It's just a card that, if it's not dealt very quickly, and probably you should be playing with it, that when you play it, you sort of know that you are going to be able to flip it next turn. That means, like, basically, I'm asking you to have a removal. If you don't, I win the game.
Yeah, the only thing holding it back is you can't always flip it, right? Because they do have to have that threshold of 8 cards. Yeah. That's why I gave it an A-, because 4 mana, 4/5, they sacrifice a creature is like a B+, because it's big enough. I was like, okay. And a decent amount of the time you're going to flip it and then just win the game every time. So I'm like, well, what grade is between B+ and A? I gave it an A-, but I mean, obviously it's like stupid good.
Dominic, 8 cards is a bunch, but I mean, you have plenty of cards that mill both players in this set. So I mean, I think that when you play Shieldred, you're going to probably.
And she also adds 1, right? They have to sack a non-token creature
automatically.
So that's good.
Okay.
All right, Breach the Multiverse. 5 black black for a sorcery at rare. Each player mills 10 cards. For each player, choose a creature or planeswalker card in that player's graveyard and put those cards on the battlefield under your control. Then each creature you control becomes a fraction in addition to its other types. Kind of plays nicely with the having 8 or more things in your opponent's graveyard, so it turns on some of your spells. And putting 2 things into play from not just from this flip, but also their graveyard in general. Pretty nice, but 10 cards is a lot. So you're probably going to get 2 pretty good things from this card, which is fantastic, but it's also a 7 mana sorcery. So it's often going to win the game, but you need to get 7 mana. I gave it a C minus because also you don't always get what you want with it. I mean, you're going to get 2 cards, but yes, you flip 10, but like if you get like 2 4 mana cards or something off of it and you didn't hit their true bomb, then it's not always going to win. It's just often going to win. So all that, it was a little bit too much risk, I think, but clearly is going to win a game a lot of the time. So I have to somehow sum all of that into a single grade. I thought, hey, C minus I think is appropriate given its upside and downside. Maybe you thought, hey, there's a little more upside to it than I'm looking at.
I think that my grade is basically, I feel about the card the same. I'm just betting on us getting to 7 mana much more frequently.
I mean, you did mention the land cycling cards, and that's like perfect, like the peanut butter jelly to this, because they help get you the cards, and then at least at a minimum, you have a 6 mana card in your graveyard for the Breach of the Multiverse. So they kind of enable that already. So again, I think that's a pretty nice combo, especially with like the white one, for example. Like you're getting a Oblivion Ring creature to come back into play basically off of this, and whatever else your opponent does. But yeah.
Yeah, I was just I saw a tweet from LSV, and they did the Rares and Mythic review for the LR, and he said that in black they didn't give any card a grade below A minus, and I'm looking at this
Wow.
and looking at our grade, and I think someone is wrong here.
Yep. Well, that's true.
Hopefully it's not us. Hopefully it's not us. I still think, yeah, I think you're going to get to 7 mana more frequently than not, and that's why I gave it a C plus. It's still very expensive, so for 7 mana I expect that kind of a big effect.
Absolutely.
Um, but I gave it a C plus because I think it will be more common than not. Hoarding Broodlord, 5 black black black, creature dragon convoke. That's good for the cost that it has. Flying, and when Hoarding Broodlord enters the battlefield, search your library for a card, exile it face down, then shuffle. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may play it. Spells you cast from exile have convoke. I gave it an A minus. You gave it a B. I think
I'm wrong actually on this one.
8 mana, but I think that you're going to be more playing it like for a 6 to 5. Yeah,
5
6
to 6,
to 5.
yeah. And then it's busted. Yeah.
And then you get like another great card that you
Yeah.
can pick for your game plan. And even if they kill it, the Hoarding Broodlord, you will still be able to.
Yeah, because it's part of the ability.
It's
can
part
never
of the
take that
ability.
away from you.
It won't get Convoke if they kill the
Right.
Broodlord, but you still get the card, which is great. So I think that it's worth.
7/6 is also just absolutely enormous. I think it's an A minus. I think this was the one where I was putting the slides together, and then I had to sheepishly put my grade in and was like, "Dang it, I think you're right," because we grade it independently, and I was like, "But I'm not going to cheat. I'll still give it the B that I incorrectly assumed."
And that's good. I mean, I think that it's fine because it's also, I think it was a really big learning process for me when I compared the grades that we had, and I had to reevaluate things and try to put myself in your shoes. It was also a great experience, and I think that if you cheat on those disagreements, you don't learn properly. So that's the thing. Oh, talking about disagreements. Talking about disagreements there.
Okay. Grafted Butcher, 1 and a black for a 2/2 Fraction Samurai at rare. When it enters the battlefield, fractions you control gain menace until end of turn. Kind of nice. You get some bonus chip damage. Maybe good at flipping battles. And it gives other fractions you control get +1/+1. I guess I didn't really think there was that many fractions in the set. There is a lot of incubate and there's a lot of fractions. So I was mostly grading this card on the fact that you're going to maybe pump some of your creatures, but not all of them. And it has 3 and a black. Sacrifice an artifact or creature, return it from your graveyard to the battlefield, activate only as a sorcery. So 2-mana 2/2s are pretty bad, but 2-mana 2/2 lords are pretty good. And if you have enough fractions, this card's like super busted. And the fact that your opponent can't ever remove it because it just comes back is pretty crazy. So clearly, this I think it should be in a B grade, like in the B realm for me, actually. Um, I think it's still like I don't know. It's a 2-mana 2/2, which I don't think is like that great. So actually, like I gave this a C plus. That's definitely too low. Um, I'll move up to B minus just right away because I do see the power here. But talk me up a little bit. You really like this card?
So that was definitely a hot take from me on this card, to give it an A minus. But I do think that the sort of like indestructible lord, it doesn't come back for free, but it comes back. If you need it, you're gonna get it back. Also, the fact that there's ETB of giving menace to everything that you have is a pretty strong ability because it will die because people will have to deal with it. And I actually graded it that high because it is a 2-drop. Because I think that it's like it's not a good comparison with Luminarch Aspirant, but that was a 2-drop rare that was changing the maths of the game by quite a lot. I see this card as a 2-drop that I'm going to play on curve on turn 5, like a 2-drop, 3-drop, and swing with all because my creature just got so much bigger at that stage. And I gave it an A minus, which may be inflated, but I don't think that by a lot. Just wanted to draw attention to the fact that this card I think is a really, really strong card. I think it's better than the Night Lord in this format because of the ability to bring it back, while the Night Lord you deal with it with a lot of removal and that's it for it. That's the biggest drawback of that card. That's a 2/2. Well, here the ability to recast it from your graveyard and also gaining this bonus at the recast instantly is going to be pretty strong.
Yeah, and there is the play pattern of like maybe you like trade this with like their 2/2 or 3/2, then you bring it back, and then all the Phyrexians that you still have running around get the menace another time. So it's
Yeah.
actually good at like pushing damage a lot with that. That actually kind of I could bump it up to B, but I'm not going to go higher than B.
That's fine. That's fine. We'll see. We'll see after the format is done. Just how optimistic I was to get the Grafted Butcher, but I do like the card. I think it also has potential constructed connotations.
Oh, it's great there. Yeah.
Oh well, we went through the black and we moving to red. So let's go with it.
Onward. All right, my turn. Invasion of Kaldheim. I love that plane. 3 in a red for a battle. It's rare. When Invasion of Kaldheim enters the battlefield, exile all cards from your hand, then draw that many cards. Until the end of your next turn, you may play cards exiled this way, and it has 4 defense. So it's coming in. You're probably going to get to play a card or 2 off of that ability, and you refuel. These ones are when you have to dump like literally all your hand. Sometimes it's awkward because you can't control like if you really want like one card, but usually it works off better than not. And if you did only want one card, well, just play it right away before you lose it. So that part's pretty sweet. And then for defense, so what does it turn into? It turns into Pyre of the World Tree. It's an enchantment. You can discard a land card to have it deal 2 damage to any target. And whenever you discard a land card, exile the top card of your library, you may play that card this turn. So already you're probably going up anywhere from about 1 to 3 cards, depending where you're playing this in the game, because you're just going to play like a land off the invasion, maybe the next turn or this turn, whatever, and then 1 or 2 spells off of it. And then you have a full, 3 or 4 cards that you drew off the invasion. So that part's pretty nice, just, smoothing out your draws, giving you extra card advantage, etc. But really, the backside is super strong because pretty much the rest of the game, you can just start stockpiling lands. And when you discard them, you're clearing the way. And not only when you do that, but you can also still keep hitting land drops or playing land or playing spells off the top of your deck because you get that exile and play it this turn. So a lot of craziness going on with the invasion. I really like it. The only knock against it is it doesn't impact the board at all when it comes down. And so that means it doesn't really help you flip it. And a lot of the power is again on the back. But drawing enough cards to help set it up means that you're going to find hopefully some way to be able to flip it. And once you do, I think it's actually quite strong on the backside as well. So again, a little clunky, but a lot of power there. We both said, hey, B minus for this card. We both like it. But it's not like necessarily going to win the game on the spot. It does require you to do a few things to get to that point.
Yeah, I think that this card is super powerful, but will have a complicated game plan. I mean, I guess if you play it, you want to probably play it for with 3 cards in hand, 2 of which are lands, and then you instantly can play one of those lands. Next turn, you play the other one, and whatever spell you exile, you also be able to cast this somehow. And then you just basically 4 mana drew 3 cards, which is great. And I'm also quite optimistic about the 4 toughness on it, the 4 defense, because if I play a battle plan in red, green, I will want to play Invasions of Regatha that deal exactly 4 damage to a battle, which makes it flip very easily without me having to attack it at all. And the Pyre of the World Tree is a house. I mean, it might not seem like much, but you basically will not need the lands probably for most of the time at that stage of the game. And changing
Mm-hmm.
every land you have into a shock that draws a card is just busted.
Yeah, super good. It kind of reminds me of like a worse version of Showdown of the Scalds from Kaldheim, where it's like you get some cards right away, and then you get this like game warping effect over the next few turns. So this card, you get some cards right away, and then it flips into this thing that just like starts wiping the board and doing all this stuff. I don't think it's quite as good as that card because that one required less work, but I mean, the fact that I'm even making that comparison points to its power.
Yeah, I just want to check. Oh no, Showdown was too old. I don't have it in my cheat
I
sheet.
think it was 2 red white, and you
Yeah,
like
no, I know what it
yeah
does. I
yeah
just thought maybe I have the win rate of it and
oh
just
oh
to see what grade it should have been, but no,
2 ancient.
too ancient, unfortunately. Right, so we have another invasion. That's Invasion of Karsus. 2 red, 4 defense. When it enters the battlefield, deals 3 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. And if you manage to flip it, it turns into a 4/4 with ward, pay 2 life. Whenever you cast a spell, Refraction Elemental, which is the name of the backside, deals 2 damage to each opponent. Um, I think it's solid. It's an effect that you don't want in every deck. You want it either in a deck that plays controlling gameplay or a deck that has a lot of stuff with toughness 4 or more. But it's a great effect then. Obviously, you want to put cards according to your plan and not anything else. And it flips into a really solid creature, like 4/4 with ward, pay 2 life. That's going to do something. And I assume that you want to have some spells in your deck, as you don't want to put only lands, because that triggers for any spell. And because any spell that you cast into a shock into the face, which will be very quickly something that will kill the opponent. And even if they want to kill the elemental, they need to shock their face for 2 life on top of everything. So I graded it B minus. You graded this a B minus because I think it just is not as game warping. Actually, when I look at it, I probably want to bump the Invasion of Kaldheim slightly because I think this one is weaker than the Invasion of Karsus.
Yeah, I
But I
think
think it's still a B
so.
minus card.
Yeah, so I
I
mean the
think
other,
that maybe
yeah, the other card was maybe a B, but
yeah,
I mean
exactly.
a lot of the power. It's kind of awkward because like the front half of the invasion, giving the little mini board sweep, sometimes that's great and sometimes not. But like the backside's always basically great, right? Where it becomes your game plan of just okay. Every time I do take like this game action, you're gonna slowly lose all your health, which is really nice. Yeah, I really like it. But it is a little awkward in red because red tends to be aggressive. So you often didn't want to play like these types of things where you're sweeping your own board. So they tend to not be cards you even play in red a lot of the time. So making it work can be a little tricky. Like you're saying, maybe like red green where you have more high toughness. Also, it's a little awkward because in this set there's a bunch of incubation tokens. So a lot of your opponent's creatures aren't even always creatures yet. So normally with like one of these like sweeper type things, you like can do that and even attack. And if they have some mana up and an incubation token, it doesn't really do that. So there is that. But honestly, it's not that bad to also just attack some small things in. Your opponent thinks they're eating all your creatures. You play this, at least wipe the board, and you have a plan to get a 4/4 later on with a big ability. B minus, yeah.
Yeah, this one may be actually one of the few invasions that you might sometimes want to play post combat.
Right. It's setting up future plans.
Yeah, exactly. Um,
All right. Urabrask. You said this is the one we're going to fight on a lot. So let's see how much. 2 red for a legendary creature, Praetor, obviously Mythic. It's a 4/4. So Urabrask is a 4/4 first strike. And when you cast an instant or sorcery spell, deals 1 damage to target opponent and add a red. And then you can pay red, exile it, return it to the Saga side, but only if you've played 3 or more sorceries or instants this turn, which in limited is going to be really, really, really hard to do. So how good is a 4-mana 4/4 first strike with the ability to kind of ping your opponent now and again? Pretty good, actually. I think 4/4 first strike rumbles really, really well. And the fact that you get some red mana as well maybe lets you double spell. You can play some things and also advance your board on the same turn. So I don't even really look at the backside that much on this card, though. I think you can actually build a blue-red spells that sometimes can flip, and then that's going to be pretty nice. So let's at least consider it as part of the grade. Flips into the Great Work. Chapter 1 deals 3 damage to target opponent, each creature they control. Wowza. Chapter 2, create 3 treasure tokens. And Chapter 3, until end of turn, you may cast instants and sorcery spells from any graveyard. If a spell would be cast this way, instead of putting it in a graveyard, exile it instead, and then flip it back to Urabrask. Okay, well, you're pretty much going to get a mini sweeper on your opponent on the backside, so that's incredible. The treasure tokens help you cast spells from your opponent's graveyard. That's kind of nice. And so when that happens, obviously you've done it. This card's even better. But even if we just look at it mostly as the 4/4 first strike with the ability, we said that's, probably 70% of the card, maybe 80% of the card even. We said that's a B. And sometimes it's going to be even better than that because you built your crazy spells deck, which isn't really supported in the format, but more seems like constructed.
Yeah, obviously, when you flip the whole saga, you already had at least 3 instant sorceries in your graveyard because you flipped it in the first place. So you're going to have this magnificently explosive turn because you can recast them. It's basically once you flip it once, you will flip it the second time easily because you will cast those 3 instant sorceries, get the red mana for casting them, and
you need to flip them multiple times to win, right?
Yeah. But that's just know it that when you flip it once, you will also have almost a guarantee of flipping it for the second time on the same turn as it flips back to Urabrask unless they kill it instantly. I completely agree with that. I was just joking about our disagreements. We have the same grade for the card. Who knows? Maybe there will be decks that are quite easy on casting it, on flipping it. And that might be the surprise for this card that the set will bring us, but we will only learn about it when we actually get the cards in our hands. All right, Chandra, Hope's Beacon. 4 red for a Planeswalker, Chandra. 5 loyalty. It has a static ability. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. That ability triggers only once each turn. Aw, weak. Only once each turn you copy your spell. Shame. +2, it adds 2 mana in any combinations of colors. For +1, it exiles the top 5 cards of your library. Until end of your turn, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from among those exiled cards. And then -X, Chandra, Hope's Beacon deals X damage to each of up to 2 targets. That's a lot that this card does. We both gave it A-, and I'm probably can guess that we are slightly wrong on that card, both of us, because it probably might be
it's probably just an A.
Higher. Yeah, probably just an A. Exactly. I mean, the ability of casting it and plussing it by 2 and having 7 loyalty almost guarantees that it will survive till your next turn. And if it survives to your next turn, you can do multiple things with it. If you don't have an instant sorcery, you can dig for it, and 5 cards is a lot, so you can probably find it and cast it and then copy it. And I assume that if you're playing red, that one of those red spells is going to be some kind of a removal spell, which will be great to double it. If you already have an instant, you can add more mana, or you can kill 2 additional creatures by removing some of those loyalty counters. If it survived with like 5/4, you can pick 2 things for 3. It's just going to be amazing, and it will do so much. And as Isaiah is telling, you can even copy a 2 mana spell right away on turn 6 when you cast it, because you give yourself 2 mana, cast a 2 mana spell, and copy it twice. So you can imagine if you have Voltaic Spite, you play Chandra, you play Volcanic Spite, kill 2 things, discard 2 lands, draw 2 cards, busted.
Yeah, seems okay. All right. Bloodfeather Phoenix is next. 1 unread for a 2/2 Phoenix. It's a rare. Of course, that's flying. And it's going to have some way to come back from the graveyard. Um, but also it can't block. So how
I
does
think
it
this
come
is also
back?
like, no, isn't that normal for phoenixes that they just don't block?
Most of them don't block. Some of them do. Um, most of them have haste. This one doesn't initially. So I don't know. I should probably say what the card does because I'm confusing our audio listeners. Okay, so anyways, 2 and a 2/2 flying, can't block. Whenever an instant or sorcery spell you control deals damage to an opponent or battle, you may pay red. If you do, return the Phoenix from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste until in turn. So only haste when it comes back from the graveyard. Um, so I'm thinking 2 mana, 2/2 flying that is repeatable is just really strong, even if it can't block. But your opponent, there's a lot of Windrakes. So do they want to block with their Windrakes to trade? Probably not with the Phoenix. So it's just going to keep attacking at least until the 70 reach creatures come down. And yes, even if your opponent is able to kind of deal with it, as long as it's just normal killing it, it's pretty easy to bring it back from the graveyard. If you do have a few of those red damage based spells, which there's a decent number in the set. So then it comes back. Now you can't just bring it back over and over and over and over again because it's not constructed, and obviously you're probably only going to have maybe like 3 ways to bring back the Phoenix, but the fact that you could bring it back probably once over the course of game is enough. So I gave it a B minus for all those reasons.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I do put a lot more weight on the count block part of the card, and that's why it has a C plus with me. But it's a strong C plus.
Good thing it's a strong one. Yeah, that makes the difference.
It's on the top spectrum of the C pluses I'm giving. I mean, it's not far from a B minus, but I'm going to keep it on the C plus.
Sounds good.
Invasion of Tarkir. 1 in red. For a battle siege, it has 5 defense. And when Invasion of Tarkir enters the battlefield, reveal any number of dragon cards from your hand. When you do, Invasion of Tarkir deals X plus 2 damage to any target. Where X is the number of cards revealed this way, X can be 0, so it will be at least a shock. And then if you flip it, it turns into a 4/4 flying trample dragon, and with an ability of whenever a dragon you control attacks, it deals 2 damage to any target. Any target means it can deal damage to battles, creatures, or opponents. I give it an A minus. You give it a B plus. I think that we vaguely agree on that the card is really strong. For me, this is the sort of Bone Crusher Giant. It has a shock for 2 mana, and then it turns into a really menacing creature. I think that since the creature is harder to get but much more powerful, I still think it's an A minus. But it can be also part of the A minus is that I think red is a really strong color, so that will add to general win rate of red cards.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I like shock. I just think sometimes it's not going to be enough, and obviously you're not really going to have a bunch of dragons lying around. The backside is super super good. You would always play like a shock or two in your deck. So the Invasion of Tarkir itself, the front side is going to be really really good. But shock itself is not like an amazing card, and this is an overcosted shock. So and it's obviously only at sorcery speed. So all that reason, it's like I'm really wanting to get to that backside of the card. And so that's why I gave it a B plus. Obviously, if you get to the backside of the card, it's completely insane. You paid 2 mana for an unbeatable dragon. But I think like five defense is a lot on the cheap battle because it means that you're gonna have to like basically build out like on the more expensive battles. The fact that they have higher numbers doesn't really necessarily like bother me quite as much because you probably have gotten to that point in the game anyways where there's a lot of creatures in play. But on the cheaper card, it's like how am I explaining this? It like if this is your turn to play because you shock something, then you haven't really built out the board. It's going to take a while to be able to get the creatures in play to actually be able to support attacking for 5. But it also, on the other hand, it lets you double spell. So maybe on turn 4 you play this shock something and you do have good attacks. So maybe my point is completely invalid. I don't know. It's somewhere in the really good range.
Did you consider that there are 6 dragons in the set?
Yeah, I knew you were going to pull that out of your pocket. And I was like,
I think that the only one that is realistically there is the 7-mana Convoke Dragon that might be in your hand for a long time and make it slightly better because 2 mana for 3 damage is where you want it to be.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's going to be a good card. I think that we can discuss all we want, but that's going to happen. And whether it's going to be a B plus or a minus is maybe secondary there.
Okay, before we move on, I want to articulate my foolish rant a little more. I've thought it through a little bit more. So basically, the really expensive, like the more expensive sieges that also have higher defense values, often when they're impacting the board to get rid of something, it's a little bit more deterministic, like you're bouncing something or killing mostly anything, and this is only a shock. So I'm sort of saying, like at that point in the game, if the shock's not good, then the fact that this was like cheap and has that really high defense value makes it a little bit worse than it would look otherwise. That's what it was. That makes a lot more sense, but I had to get there in my logic train.
Yeah, that makes sense. But also, I mean, it gives you extra mana to play.
I'm also
something
giving the
else.
card a B plus, so
Yeah,
I think it's amazing.
Okay, I think we can end it there. The
We
card
could
is
go.
going to be good. You're going to first pick it.
Yes.
Nahiri's Warcrafting. 1 red for a sorcery. Nahiri's Warcrafting deals 5 damage to target creature, planeswalker, or battle. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the excess damage dealt this way. You may exile one of those cards, put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. You may play the exiled cards this turn. You gave it a B, I gave it a B minus. It's really a solid removal. I guess I probably should have given it a B because
No, I think B minus is right actually. No, I don't
is
think
it?
about it
Well,
more.
okay, we're very kind to each other.
Yeah, it
Because
kind of reminds me of the that fumarole or whatever. I don't know what call time is on the
Tundra
mind.
Fury, but that only deals 4. 5 is a hell of a lot. And also the fact that you can draw a card sometimes is good.
But it has to be if it was till the end of the next turn,
Yeah, that would have
then
been
it would
much
be
better.
for sure a B. But like the fact that you have to play this and then you sometimes don't get the card. Like if it's not a land, then it's going to be hard until like turn 6 or 7 to like really ensure you can play whatever it is.
Yeah, these cards are very problematic for me because I automatically play a land and then I cast this and it's like, damn it, missed on the value there. But yeah, I get B minus. It's going to be a very good card. It's going to be one of the top removals. I think one knock against this, the casting cost is a bit excessive with the double red. It's for a cheap card.
It makes you feel like you're playing old school Magic where everything had double colored costs and you can never cast your spells. Wasn't that great? I'm shaking my head no. All right. Rampaging Raptor. Ooh, I get a good one here. 2 red for a 4/4 Dino. It's a rare. Trample Haste. You can pay 2 and a red to give Rampaging Raptor +2/+0 until end of turn. And whenever it deals combat damage to an opponent, deals that much damage to target planeswalker that player controls or battle that player protects. 4 mana 4/4 Trample Haste with upside is really, really good. I don't really know what to tell you. I gave it a B+.
I gave it an A- because I like it clean design. I know it's many words, but I think the design is relatively clean. And yeah, again, it's going to be a great addition to the red-green Battle Buster kind of archetype. But you will put it in anything that has a smither of red.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Voldaren Thrillseeker, 2 and a red. Creature Vampire Warrior, it's a 1/1. But it does have backup 2. And it has the ability, 1, sacrifice this creature, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. I gave it a C+, and you gave it a B, and I'm very wrong, I think. I'm very, very wrong on this card. It's just I thought about it harder after I looked at it, and the card is probably more powerful than I anticipated. It's just like it threatens so much damage when you play it because you let's keep it a scenario. You have like a 3/3 on board. You play it, you back up the 3/3, it becomes a 5/5, it attacks. If they don't block it, they're dead. So they have to block
just 10
it.
damage. Yeah.
Yeah, so they have to block it. And then also blocks become clunky because if you have like 1 mana left over, they cannot like block it with the X1 because you're just going to ping it and your thing is going to survive. If they double block, for example. So yeah, it does a lot of things, and it definitely is a B. I don't know if it's a B minus or B, but there and abouts.
I agree with everything you said, so that's what I was thinking of. Some pretty smart arguments, and I think that makes it a B. So that's what I graded it.
Yeah, like when you grade 300 cards, some of
You
them
miss a
slip
few,
through the
yeah, yeah,
cracks. Yeah,
yep, definitely.
that's why I'm going to call my C plus on this card.
Love it. Okay, well, let's see. Itali Primal Conqueror, 5 red for a 7/7 legendary Elder Dinosaur. It's rare. It has trample, and when it enters the battlefield, each player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card, and you may cast any number of those from among the non-land cards. Exile this way without paying their mana cost. So basically, it comes in and you get guaranteed 2 spells, one from your deck, one from your opponent's deck. So 7 mana, get 2 spells, play them right away. That's pretty busted. And I gave the Black Mill 10 cards a C minus. This card is much, much, much better than that. So I don't know what I'm thinking on C minus there. Let me think about what I really give it in just a second here. Now, you can also transform it. 9 and a Phyrexian Green, which is a lot. But it transforms Atali as a sorcery into an 11/11 trample indestructible. Turns into a Blightsteel Colossus, basically. And when it deals combat damage to a player, they get that many poison counters. That's crazy. Just because you needed more things on it. But mostly even, I mean, that's still a couple turns away after you cast the Atali. But a 7, well, I guess it's not actually like strictly worse than that Black Mill 10 card that we looked at earlier, because you don't have really any control with Atali on what you flip. Like if you just flip a 2-drop on your deck and a 2-drop on their deck, it's like not that impressive. But that's the floor. And you get a 7/7 trample always, which is really, really good. So I think it does cost 7, but as we've talked about, the set maybe is a little bit slower, gives you a little breathing room. People don't want to attack as much. We have land cyclers, we have ramp creatures. So I'm coming around on the 7 drops actually. Um, I'm gonna say I was really wrong before and come up to B minus actually on this card, because it does still cost 7. I have to kind of grade it for that, but dang it if it's not powerful.
Yeah, this is the kind of awkward card that it does require some setup. Maybe in a color that is less likely to get to those 7 mana because it's maybe slightly off plan. Otherwise, it would have been A grade if you were playing it in an archetype that plans on ramping and plans on having those 7 mana every game. And here maybe it's just slightly worse because of that.
Yeah, to be fair, if this card was in Phyrexian LB1, it would be like a D because it costs 7 mana. So
Yeah,
maybe that's
probably
what I was thinking about.
All right. Well, if you went up on this one, then I think we can move on because that's very close to what I was evaluating it on. Into the Fire. 2 and a red. Choose one. Into the Fire deals 2 damage to each creature, planeswalker in battle. Or put any number of cards from your hand onto the bottom of your library, then draw that many cards +1. So here we have a modal spell that has 2 very different modes. One of them is Control Decks Dream. You basically pyroclasm things for 3 mana. So you can nullify everything that your opponent did in the first couple of turns. And the second mode is late game kind of mode, where you have too many lands. You can accumulate some of them in your hand and convert those lands into hopefully real spells at that stage. And also you put them on the bottom, so you sort of guarantee that you're not going to draw them until really, really late in the game. I gave it a B minus. You gave it a C minus. I gave it a B minus because I think it fits in well into some kind of red-based control deck. Because those are the 2 effects that kind of deck wants to have at different stages of the game, which is great because it makes a card that is very often a sideboard grade, the Pyroclasm, into a card that you can reliably put in your main deck because you will have some use of it later in the game, and that's why I gave it a B minus. It maybe is a C plus.
I'm sticking with C minus on this one because I think 2 damage is just too little. I mean, I get that you could deal some damage to battles. Maybe you can wipe out a creature. Also, because it's situational, sometimes with this card, like even if you have a 2/2 in play and like a random other 2/3 or something, like you can make some attacks and then maybe engineer a situation where you 2 for 2 with it. But I also think the modality on it's not that strong because both modes are like situational and just not that good. So I mean, I give some bonus points because you could choose either, but I'm mostly not going to choose that second mode until, like you said, till like way later you have the extra lands going on kind of thing. And I think with this card, you're going to be hoping like you're like, ooh, Into the Fire, like, wow, they played like a 2/2 on 2, like we're doing it, and then on turn 3 they're like, and now I play a 3/3, and you're like, okay, like great, like you could kill their 2/2, and it just doesn't do that much. So,
But
C- for me.
I think Matt Moses has also a very good point to in aid of your argument. It also deals damage to opponent battles, and you can't do anything about
Oh
it.
yeah, that's pretty bad too.
Yeah, that is actually pretty bad. I mean, not that the other things were not bad, but that is can be a situation where you can't really afford to play it because you're gonna flip something busted.
Right. City on Fire. We have a wild disagreement here. That's fun. 5 red for an enchantment. It's rare. It has Convoke. And it says if a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage instead. My main argument for this card is that when you hold up one finger and then you hold up a second finger and then a third one, that's 3 times as many as just one, you see? So that's a lot. And that's my evaluation of the card is that
the math checks out.
yeah, like turning all your like 1/1s into like deal 3s with combat is just really good. And I sort of think of it as the same way as with the 7/6 flyer, which basically has the same mana cost in black. Now, obviously 7/6 flyer convoking, getting a card from your deck is amazing because that ends the game. But I also think while this card, it's a little bit worse in the sense you don't have something to stabilize the board immediately. You also kind of do because everything deals 3 times more damage. So even if you had like, let's say you had 4 creatures in play and you tap 3 of them, then you still have 1 creature and it's going to like basically trade with whatever. And now they all just deal triple damage for the rest of the game. All your spells that deal damage deal triple damage. And I think it's just going to be really easy to win after that. So I just think it's really strong. So I'm giving it a B. But you think setup cost is a lot. D for you, and you might be right too. But let's talk about it.
I gave it a D because I think that it's a card that appeals to Timmy kind of players, and
Well, you found me.
jam it, and they will jam it into their decks, and they will play the card suboptimally, and because of that, the win rate of the cards. I'm keeping my D is procedural here. It's not that I evaluate this card as D. I think maybe it's definitely not a B for me, but maybe it's like in a C range of somewhere. But I think it's going to have stats of a D card after we tally up how the format played out, because it's going to be played as the super optimistic Magic Fairyland kind of scenario, and people are going to play it in the wrong decks and lose with it quite a lot.
I love being a Magic Fairyland.
I know, but I mean, normally you just
normally or not. Yes,
it doesn't happen. No, that's my rationale for the grade of the card.
Fair enough.
Whew, we move to green. Excellent. Oh.
Enjoy.
Vorinclex. 3 green, legendary creature 5 and Praetor. Shockingly, it's a 6/6 with trample and reach for 5 mana. That's already a B plus, isn't it? A B. But there's more. When Vorinclex enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 2 forest cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand, and then shuffle. That makes it better. And then it has 6 and green. Exile Vorinclex, then return it to the battlefield, transformed under its owner's control, activate as a sorcery. So this is the one that doesn't have any other requirement except for having much more lands. But also you get 2 of those lands when you play it. So it helps itself to flip. But it might not happen on the next turn after you played it. So you have to just be satisfied with just jamming a 6/6 trample reach.
Yeah, you just have all spells in hand. What an unfortunate life.
Exactly. So the flip side is a saga. Chapter 1 is mill 10 cards. Put up to 2 creature cards from among the milled cards onto the battlefield. Decent. Then Chapter 2 distribute 7 +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures you control. It sounds pretty good. And then Chapter 3 is until end of turn, creatures you control gain 1 mana. That's it. No tapping, no nothing. This creature fights target creature you don't control, exile the Grunt evolution, then return it to the battlefield as Vorinclex, so you can get 2 more forests if you really want it at that stage.
This card is stupid.
I gave it an A. You gave it an A because I think that this card is an A. Like the only really like knock against it is that sometimes you will not be able to flip it because you just don't have 10 cards in your library and you will mill
Yeah.
yourself out. That's more or
And
less
it costs 5, right? Sometimes you want your A plus to cost like 3 or 4 mana and still win the game. You're like,
Yeah,
oh
that's
man,
true.
I got to get to 5 mana.
But yeah, you're gonna pick it first. Pick it. You're gonna make sure that you can play it in your draft deck, and you're gonna be happy about it. That's my prediction.
Good prediction. Next up is Invasion of Ikoria. X green for a battle at rare. When it enters the battlefield, search your library and or graveyard for a non-human creature card with mana value X or less and put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle. So, take note of what non-humans you have in your deck, because otherwise this card's really awkward if you pay 6 mana and you can't get anything that you wanted. So, first thing to note. But assuming you build your deck right and you know what's in your deck and you're paying attention, you'll go get something and you're like, okay, nice. And it has 6 defense. So you go get your creature. You're like, okay, we're doing it. Okay. So what happens when you defeat those 6 defense counters? Well, you get Zilortha, Apex of Ikoria. Zilortha is a big old dinosaur, has reach, and most importantly, probably, it's an 8/8. So, big dinos. They're great. And additionally, for each non-human creature you control, you may have that creature assigned its combat damage as though it weren't blocked. So you got a non-human on the front side, you've got an 8/8 on the back side here. Maybe you have like 14 power and your opponent is probably just dead. So that's nice. It Thorn Elementals all your non-humans. The only thing holding this card back is that the front side is pretty clunky. It allows you to add some extra mana for the flexibility of going to get whatever you want, which is really, really strong, right? Like it's a bad Green Sun Zenith, essentially, as long as you have enough non-humans in your deck. That, if you really have, like, if you have Vorinclex in your deck, suddenly Vorinclex is even better because you have 2 of it now. You just pay 7 mana and you go get your Vorinclex. Obviously, that's not going to happen very often, but even if you have there's like a common 4/5, right? Well, you can pay 7 mana and go get a 4/5. That's fine. Hopefully, you have something better than that, but like that's fine. It helps set up being able to attack this. The backside's huge, right? The 8/8 reach is amazing. And it probably almost wins the game on its own. So I'm just thinking, like, all in all, the card is again powerful but slow, kind of clunky, deck restrictions, draft restrictions. So on the bad side of things, it's really quite bad. On the good side of things, when it works out and you have Vorinclex, it's amazing. All in all, I just gave it a C. Like, you kind of have to really evaluate what are the options you have and how strong is the card based on it, because the front side varies wildly based on how you draft. Oh, you're muted. Sergovitz, can you hear me? You're muted.
Yes, I agree with all you said. I think that you'd want to have one of those cheaper utility creatures that you can, bring to the battlefield, and maybe like Renata, maybe a perfect one. You play it for 6, you bring Renata in. That's a non-human, I think, because it's a demigod. And it becomes big because Ikoria already gives a lot of devotion.
Yeah.
potentially, but something like that. I mean, something that's like a creature that brings extra value to you and it's not expensive to bring it with it. I put it on C plus because I think the upside of the 8/8 Thorn Elemental kind of creature that makes everything that you do unblockable. You basically can flip any battle that you play. That kind of stuff is quite powerful.
I do think it gets a little better in this format because I think the packs are going to be more powerful in general because you have all these extra slots. So when you have more uncommons and rares per pack, it means you're just going to have more like busted picks through pick like 6. And so because of that, you're just more likely to end up with a busted thing to go find with your invasion. That's my guess. So maybe I need to be like higher on it than if that we didn't have those special pack slots, which is really going to make the format totally wild and crazy. And I can't even fathom with sealed. Oh my god, it's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, it's like I mean, talking about the card in general and the mechanics, I think that this is a slightly underexplored design space in Magic. There were a couple of those creatures that cost little, and there was like, I think in Strixhaven, a 2 mana 5/4 but you had to pay 3 more when you cast it or something like that.
Oh yeah, that would be nice with this. Yeah, 4 mana,
Yeah,
go get
those
it.
kind of cards are slightly underexplored, and I was looking at a potential of building something around this constructed for fun. They should put more of those creatures because I'm missing some of them for my weird brews. Thank you, Wizards, for listening. But yeah, C plus, it's not a card that you're going to prioritize super highly. You probably want to get it as a reward for being in a particular lane, like later in the pack, and not something that you want to first pick. Polucrinus Reborn, GGG, for a 4/5 reach Hydra. And it can be flipped for 6 and white Phyrexian as a sorcery, and it flips into a 6/6 reach lifelink. Whenever Polucrinus, Engine of Ruin, or another non-token Hydra you control dies, create a 3/3 green and white Phyrexian Hydra creature token with reach, and a 3/3 green and white Phyrexian Hydra creature token with lifelink. So it's what's the name?
Wormcoil Engine?
Wormcoil Engine. It's a Wormcoil Engine that has a weird front side that is very difficult to cast. But it's a 3 mana 4/5, which is also like this is a perfect card you want to search with your Ikoria spell.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, like if you have Polucrinus, the Ikoria saga becomes busted basically, because if you can play with for 5 mana, you're still quite happy. Still, even though it costs green, it is a B for me. You gave it a B minus, because I think that it's also fine to be played on turn 5.
Yeah, turn 5 or 6, right?
Yeah.
I kind of evaluated it like it was already a 6 mana card because of the cost restriction.
Yeah.
And a 6 mana 4/5 reach with that flip ability. It probably is still a B. You're probably right, because I'd happily pay 6 mana for this card.
Yeah.
If I could always just cast it on 6 mana. So
important to note, there are no other Hydras in the format, so you won't get any other extra value that is left for constructed players to get other Hydra skill.
That's just a shame.
I know. Still, a really, really good card. However, when you first pick it, you probably want to make sure that you're going heavily green in that draft, and later you might actually not be able to pick it when you are splashing green, for example.
Right. All right, Tribute to the World Tree. Some more green cards. Let's see if this one's as good. So an enchantment, it's a rare. It says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card if its power is 3 or greater. Otherwise, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. So green, hard to cast. Are you happy with this card to cast it on turn 5 or 6? Because it's been very difficult. Well, it comes in and does absolutely nothing. And then if you cast some big creatures, you draw a card. So then you're even on cards. And then if you do more, then maybe you can get some counters or something. I'm not about it. Hard to cast card that does nothing. I think maybe in the most dedicated of green decks, maybe if you have like 11 or 12 forests in your deck and, a bunch of creatures, then maybe the card is playable. But I want to give that your favorite preliminary word of caution. Maybe I should just give it an F, but I see the potential, so I gave it a D- instead.
Yeah,
not a good card.
I gave it a D. Very much the same. I think there will be a home for it in some kind of a small creatures +1/+1 counter deck, and that's I think that's the main utility, is not even drawing the card, but mainly getting those +1/+1 counters and snowballing from that. Yep. Doomscar Warrior, 2 green for a 4/3 human warrior. See, no Ikoria shenanigans for that card. It has backup 1 and it has trample. So, base, it's going to be a 5/4 trampler for 4 mana, which is decent. Then also it has whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or battle, look at that many cards from the top of your library. You may reveal a creature card or land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So say you play it on turn 4, you have a 2/2 or a 2/3, you make it bigger, you attack with it. It will not get blocked most likely because otherwise they would have to chump. So if it goes in for those 3 damage, you look at top 3 cards, you get a creature from that top 3 cards. Probably you're gonna hit. There is a good chance, especially when you build the deck right, for that kind of synergy. And then you're still left with the 4/3 trampling body that will probably draw you another card. So and trade with something. I give it an A minus. You give it a B plus. I think that it's going to be close. I think between those two grades, it's a great creature. The rate is really high on it, and
Yeah, I mean, I
we
mostly
get
think it has to connect to be good, even though you are putting it on the other card. Obviously, it's like a rate monster, so I'm thinking like, wow, that's just going to be fantastic. But every once in a while, it's not going to do everything you want. So that's why I gave it B plus. It doesn't kill anything when it comes to play, for example,
that's
which I
true.
often like with my A's. But yeah, excellent card. I mean, I agree. And then we have Invasion of Ixalan next, 1 and a green for a battle. It's rare. When this one enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a permanent card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. So, you're building a green deck. Most of your cards are probably permanents. So you're going to get something off of it on the 1 and green mode. And on the backside, it's Belligerent Regisaur, a 4/3 dinosaur with trample. And whenever you cast a spell, the Regisaur gains indestructible until end of turn. So how good is it to basically cycle this invasion into hopefully a like decent permanent on 2 mana? I think that's fine. It gives a little bit of selection. That's good. And then 4 defense counters, and then getting a 4/3 trample, obviously for 2 mana, like that's amazing. And you basically can give it indestructible every turn, assuming you're playing a spell. So that's pretty fantastic. But the front side I don't think is like incredible, and the Regisaur is pretty good, but as long as the game is like, well, I think it is going to be really incredibly annoying. 4/3 most of the time, indestructible. What are you supposed to do? So maybe I'm a little low on the Regisaur half of the card. I gave this C plus because I just don't think the front is something I'm like super excited about. And it doesn't really mess with your opponent, but it does give you something to do. But the Regisaur is kind of nice. Maybe it's more of like a B minus card because again, I'm not in love with the front half of the siege. I don't know. Yeah, so I'll give this a B minus. Actually, I'll come up on it. But
So yeah, I mean, obviously, I gave it probably half a grade up because it's in green, and I valued those green and red sagas slightly more because they have best tools to flipping them. That's, I think, the main difference that we have. If you would go to B minus with it.
okay, makes sense.
Deeproot Wayfinder, 1 and a green, Merfolk Scout, 2/3. Whenever Deeproot Wayfinder deals combat damage to a player or battle, surveil 1, then you may return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. I gave it a B plus, you gave it a B minus. I value the 2 drops, like super premium quality 2 drops, and that's probably part of my grade. Card is, I think, amazing in a way. You need some luck initially to flip a land, but once it starts going, it's going to be phenomenal. 2/3 body is going to probably be blanked quite quickly, but if you get it early, it's going to be insane and will ramp you into bigger things, which will make it even better. So maybe B plus is too much because if you draw it late in the game, it's not going to do a whole lot. But
I think oftentimes it's just not even that good on turn 2 either, right? Like if your opponent, if you're on the draw, then how do you like? It needs help to attack. Oftentimes,
but
it's a 2 mana 2/3. That's good. I'm not saying it's not, but I think in like the fact that to do anything with that 2 mana 2/3, it has to actually get through, and your opponent can just block. That's why I gave this a B minus. I respect the power of it coming out early, but I don't know. I think it's like just kind of marginal. Like it's just a good creature with good stats. I don't know.
I mean, it's also like if you have a creatures like that and maybe 1 or 2 others in a similar gist, you can sort of build your plan around the fact that your opponent will be more keen on blocking those creatures. And that's, with the 1 mana +2/+2 combat trick, that's going to be quite useful and increase utility of it. So there's also this.
Yeah, that's true. It's going to play a little bit like the toxic creatures, like you got to block it.
Exactly. But yeah, maybe B plus is a bit too high on it. I will go down to B for that.
All right. Ozolith, the Shattered Spire. Another one that I think I wanted to change my grade after I looked. But this is 1 and a green for a legendary artifact at rare. It says if one or more +1/+1 counters would be put on any artifact or creature you control, that many +1/+1 counters are put on it +1 instead. So if you put 1, you get 2. If you put 2, you would have gotten 3. And then you can pay 1 and a green and tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on target artifact or creature you control. Activate only as a sorcery. So, by the way, it also has cycling.
Don't forget. Don't forget.
You can always cycle it because, of course, you want to get rid of your bomb. Ozolith, I imagine most of the time you just play a 2-drop and 3-drop, and then on turn 4 you just play this, put 2 counters on something, and then for the rest of the game you just every turn spend 2 mana and put 2 +1/+1 counters on something. And that seems like it's pretty easy to win from there. So I gave it a B plus. I just thought, there are some games where you don't want to spend a bunch of mana to like put counters on creatures, but those games are pretty rare. I think it probably should be more of an A minus card because it completely warps the game state around this card, and it's pretty easy to use. So seems really good.
Yeah, and also, keep in mind all the other abilities that put counters are also getting better.
Yes, that's true. That's disgusting.
Yeah,
definitely an A-level card.
So you play this, you play some backup creatures. That backup becomes a backup +1. Yeah, pretty neat. Yeah, I gave it an A because I honestly do think it is an A. And weirdly, probably is going to be cheaper than the original Ozolith in terms of money value. But I think it's a way better limited card than the original version. Okay, we have Wrenn and Realmbreaker. That's a 1 green Planeswalker Wrenn, 4 loyalty. It has a static ability, lands you control have tap to add 1 mana of any color. And then it has a +1. Up to 1 target land you control becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with vigilance, hexproof, and haste until end of turn. It's still a land. -2 mill 3 cards. You may put a permanent card from among the milled cards into your hand, so only from those 3. And then -7, you get an emblem with you may play lands and cast permanent spells from your graveyard. I gave it a B, you gave it a C+. I gave it a B mainly because of the game warping properties of Planeswalkers. It's not a turn 3 Planeswalker, it's a turn 4 at best. Because of turn 4, you can play it, you can turn your land into a hexproof 3/3 vigilant creature, maybe swing for 3 if the opportunity is there, and keep it as a sort of protection for Wrenn and Realmbreaker and keeping it at 5 loyalty. I guess that at some stage you will do some milling and then do some drawing of the cards once you have that extra stabilizing effect of being able to create a 3/3 that will not be killed by removal every turn. And I think that was enough for me to put it at the B range. I didn't want to go any higher than that, and if anything, I will go maybe to B minus range, but it's still pretty solid.
Yeah, I just think I agree with you on pretty much everything you're saying. I just don't know how good that +1 actually is. I mean, you're threatening the 3 damage every single turn, and that protects Wrenn and Realmbreaker, but it does come down later, and it's not like you have reach or anything. So I feel like of Planeswalkers that protect themselves, this one technically does, but how great is it at protecting itself? It kind of is like decent, like because you don't want to trade with a 3/3s because it's just going to animate a different land the next turn. And then the -2 is fine, but you're only getting permanents back from those 3 cards, so it's like kind of hit or miss. So it's like a lot of effort to try to protect a Planeswalker and get incremental value. I mean, any Planeswalker, unless they're really bad, usually are in the B range. So I was mostly giving this a C plus as a statement that this is a lot worse than most Planeswalkers, I think, because it does not really take over the game that much. And it it does, but it just, I don't know, vigilance on the 3/3s is good. But everything just kind of adds up to being good. Like probably C plus is too low, but I want people to just realize that like it's saying Planeswalker doesn't mean like, oh my gosh, it's the best card ever. Like there's a lot better cards in the set. it's probably like I can come up to B- on it. Like it's
I think
still
no
a good card.
statement grades are good grades.
But we gotta be here for to let people know.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's definitely more of a nickel and dime kind of planeswalker than the kind of I run away with the game planeswalker.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Glistening Dawn, 2 green for a sorcery. It's rare. Incubate X twice, where X is the number of lands you control. So, pretty nice, clean, simple card. Mostly like you get to 6 lands, you play Glistening Dawn, you get 2 6/6 incubate tokens, basically. You flip one of those immediately. Next turn, you flip the other one, and you attack for 12. Pretty good. Obviously, you need to get to like 6 lands before it kind of gets to that level. And I don't know. I was sort of thinking of like that Colossal Dreadmaw like status. How good is that exactly? But I guess I kind of am discounting just playing it on turn 4 sometimes and just getting 2 4/4s as well. You might flip them both next turn as well. I said a B. It is probably a little better than that because there's so many stats. Like it's hard for your opponent to deal with both of those. Kind of reminds me of like Invoke the Ancients. We just get a bunch of giant stat creatures, and that ended up being like one of the better cards from Neon Dynasty. So this card probably has a similar effect. So it's probably more in the B plus range than a B. You're thinking A minus, and I have to agree that it's better than I said. Pretty simple card, but also just like wow, power toughness, right?
Yeah, I think it's dumb, but it's very efficient in this dumbness because 12 power when you play it on turn 6 is going to be a house, and the fact that you can flip one of them instantly when you do that is going to be quite important because it gives you this almost guarantee that you're going to survive. Plus minor things, there is counters synergies in the format. I would like to remind every single
It's
time.
true. They
That's
exist.
two permanents that get counters, so you can utilize in some other way. And also, like sometimes the game lasts long. You play some kind of a green-blue deck that wants to
Yeah,
play
you
a
get the
slower
transform
game.
benefit too. Yeah.
You get 2 transform. You get probably like 2 9/9s at that stage, and that's insane. Yeah. So I mean, I give it an A minus for that reason.
Okay.
Ancient Imperiosaur, 5 green for a creature dinosaur with Convoke. It's a 6/6 with Convoke. It has Trample, it has Ward 2, and it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it for each creature that convoked it. So I guess like a
Follow up.
perfect. Yeah, it's a very same card
Same
in the very
card.
same gist. Yeah.
I think it's
Uh,
also a B plus.
this one, yeah, you play it on turn 5 by
Yep.
convoking it with 2 cards. You get a 10/10
Is
Trample
that good?
Ward 2, and that's enough, I think.
That is enough.
The trample is a big gain on the previous card because it will finish the game quickly if it's not dealt with.
I would say more about this card, but I don't think there is much more to
No,
say.
dumb beast. Thank you.
Well,
Did I mention it has counter synergies? No, I will
now you
always
did.
mention there's counter synergies on it.
Okay, good. Invasion of Chandelar. Oh, man, I'm really losing on green. Well, no, that's not true. You had to read Vorinclex. 3 green for a 4 defense siege at Mythic. And when it enters the battlefield, return up to 3 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. So the idea is you obviously play this later because otherwise you don't have very many permanent cards in your graveyard. But at some point, just get 3 things back. Probably don't really care what they are, but it becomes a 3 for 1. Get your two drops back and the 3 drop or whatever. You're happy. And then if you're able to defeat the 4 counters, it turns into Leyline Surge, which is an enchantment. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. I mostly think that ability is not great, but sometimes it's going to give you a big mana advantage with some of the permanents you returned. So like it kind of has two states of success where you get 3 small things, you use this as the 3 for 1, you're happy with it, and the backside doesn't really matter. Or some games like your opponent did kill your 5-drop, you get that back, you get a couple smaller things, hopefully you attack it right away, and then you get to dump your 5-drop into play for free. Of course, there's also the fail state of things didn't trade off that game, and you can't play like a grindy card to get things back. So if like your opponent has a bunch of flyers and you don't have any way to stop that, this card does basically nothing. So that is a problem with the card. But if you build your deck in a way to be defensively oriented, really prioritize reach creatures, ways to trade, these types of things, then I think the card is going to be good. So if you build around it with that in mind, I think it's powerful and get your 3-for-1. I'm probably a little high on it. I had a B. It's maybe more like a B minus. But I think it's not that hard to get a lot of value off of it.
Yeah, I think it is not, but I think that it's underwhelming in a way that it doesn't really contribute to the board that much when you play it, and
That's certainly
that's
true.
my main knock against the card. Obviously, you can pair it with some black self-mill, for example, and that will make it probably slightly better. And again, the flip side, probably you sometimes even don't want to flip it, and if you want to flip it, you have a plan of using that beginning of the up capability next turn.
Yeah, it is kind of nice. It's a siege that you really don't have to attack.
That
You
is
just
true.
play it, get your 3 cards, and attack your opponent.
So yeah, maybe slightly better, but yeah, again, I
I
wouldn't
don't
go
know if
higher
that's
than C plus.
is that a better if you never want to flip your siege. That kind of says that's a
That means that
statement.
that means that majority of the value
Powers on the front.
is on the front, which is great because that's the thing that you have guaranteed. So
True.
that I'm happy with that. Yeah, I'm happy to boost it to C plus, but no more than that.
Okay.
Colorless. Sword of Once and Future. So we have the completed completed cycle of the swords. It's a sword, so it costs 3. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 because it's a sword. And it has protection from 2 colors because it's a sword, and these colors are blue and black. Whenever an equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, so Veil 2, then you may cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. And equip cost is 2 because it's a sword. I gave it a B and you gave it a B. And it's a powerful card. It's not busted, but it's very, very solid. And in some decks, it's going to be slightly better. I think that maybe the protections are not the best in the world. The blue and the
They're
black.
fine. I
Black is good.
mostly
I mean,
the ability just isn't that great, right? Like how often are you going to get those cheap spells to keep going? Like if you put it in a deck where you do have those yourself, then it's quite good. But generally, these swords you can just play in any deck because they're colorless. So in your red green deck, I don't know how exciting that is. Like you're still going to play it because it's a good card, but
come on. Surveil 2 in a green deck is exciting because you have Invasion of Chandalar and then you get cards in your graveyard.
exactly.
But yeah, it's still a B. It's still a very good rate equipment, and I think it's just going to be slightly better in actually its own color. So in the blue-black deck, it's going to be much better because that's your plan to put things in your graveyard and utilize them.
All right, we've got Invasion of Ravnica, a 5 colorless or 5 generic cost card on the front. It has 4 defense. It's a siege, of course. It is mythic. And when Invasion of Ravnica enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls that isn't exactly 2 colors. So we are for protecting the guilds and attacking anything not in the guilds is the nice flavor there. So basically, exiling I said basically a lot. Exiling almost anything for 5 mana is a nice floor for the card. If you get rid of those 4 defense counters, you get Guild Pact Paragon on the back. It's a 5/5 artifact creature. And it says whenever you cast a spell that's exactly 2 colors, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a card that's exactly 2 colors from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. There are 2 there's 2 of the 2 color cards at uncommon for every color. So I mean there's a decent amount that can trigger the Guild Pact Paragon, but you're getting a 5/5 with some upside. Every once in a while you get a card off of it, which is nice. And then of course the legend sheet has some various ones as well. All that being said, like I think the front side already, like it's clunky. 5 mana is a lot to kill anything, but that's like a C plus to pretty much 5 mana kill something. And getting a 5/5 attached, because 4 defense is relatively low at that point, and it clears the way for it. It's pretty easy to flip. So getting the 5/5 attached on the backside is enough for me to give this a B. Yeah, so that's my grade. It's a B.
I am on it. 66 creatures that are 2 colors.
Ooh.
Oh, spells, not
Spells.
creatures, because there
Spells.
is also battles. Because all the companions are 2-colored, for example. Yeah, there's just
That's a
66 of
pretty
them.
decent amount.
Obviously, most of them are rare and uncommon, so you will not get
Yeah, you're not gonna have a ton,
many
but
of
like
them.
they'll exist in your deck.
They will exist in your deck. I give it a B minus. I think that I agree with everything you said, and good part of it again is I think that there is a decent amount of power on the front side of this. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Realmbreaker, the Invasion Tree. 3 mana for an artifact that's legendary. 2 mana and a tap. Target opponent mills 3 cards. Put a land card from their graveyard onto the battlefield tapped under your control. It gains if this land would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. And then 10 and tap, you can sacrifice the Realmbreaker, the Invasion Tree, and search your library for any number of Praetor cards and put them on the battlefield and then shuffle. You gave it a D minus, I gave it an F.
I'll join you at an F for a statement. I like that.
I think that the best utility for this card is basically a millstone.
Yeah. But it's a millstone that ramps you, so once you use the first time with the millstone, the next millstone activation is cheaper. So I
That's
think that's
true.
a meaningful difference, right?
Yeah, that is true. And maybe there is a deck when you want to play it and just play the millstone. Because you play a control deck, you plan to maybe play a bit of this self mill that mills also the opponent, which will
Mhm.
makes that you attack the library at a couple of levels, and then maybe you can play the Realm Breaker, the Invasion Tree. This deck is going to come together very rarely, and that's why I give it an F.
That's why I gave it a D minus. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not good.
but precautionary F from me, even though I see that there might be a utility. Thank you, Scorcher, for contributing so valuable. You just got your food, so you're not getting any more. Thank you. Now you can move on. Thank you. There you go.
Cat sighting for the win.
What do you want from me?
If what it's because we were reading about bringing Praetors back. So if your cat were a Praetor, which Praetor would they be?
He
He?
Vorinclex.
Nice.
He's pretty savage.
That's good choice.
Yeah, maybe that should be my name for my. If I ever get a next cat, I should call him Vorinclex.
Vorin claws.
Vorinclex. Yeah, oh, Vorinclex. Ooh, good one. Oh, that's it. We finished all the rares and mythics. So we stand in front of a very difficult choice right now. Because we didn't prepare the slides for the Multiverse Legend sheet. But as a bonus, I think I have it in me to maybe go through them. I don't know if we can go through all of them. Depends on your time, really.
We can if we do it.
We do it live.
Turbo style.
We're doing it live from the Scryfall and just talk about
fine.
cards and give it great live on air.
Okay.
Before we go through that, maybe a 2-minute break. I can refill my tea and then yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so we'll be back and I'll just write it